So I'm going to switch to English. Still working on my Portuguese, but um, we're getting there. So thank you, Fanasak, as well for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be back here in Brasilia, one of my favorite cities in the world, and one of the foods I like the best in the world from Brazil. Funny story, last night I was with a group of colleagues having dinner actually just around the corner, and I ordered my favorite cut of meat. Can you guess what that is? Picanha. Well, and she looked at me across the table, stared at me, and she said, "You ordered meat? You're in sustainability. I thought you were a vegetarian." And my response, I am, except when I'm in Brazil. So again, great to be back. And I look forward to sharing with you today how we can slow down deforestation, but other use cases using AI, ML in the cloud. Three takeaways from the song we just heard, the opening song for me around this theme. One, the world is turning inside out, right? Two, talking about us, we can't stop us. Nobody can stop us, right? But three, most importantly, and here's where technology comes in, we need to move at the speed of light. And so listen again to the song later, but that's the three core messages. And moving at that speed um, really can only happen with technology. In this case, uh, big data and analytics, AI, ML, among others. So this afternoon, I'd like to share with you a little bit about our own sustainability journey at Amazon and AWS. I want to reinforce the need to see the tree through the forest, right? What does that mean? And I'll explain that. But looking at the big picture. And we'll share with you a few other use cases. I was speaking with Rodrigo. How many of you knew Rodrigo's a farmer too? Sustainable farmer, and we talked about sustainable farming and how technology could be used to support that. So there are other use cases as well that I would like to share, and then dive a little bit deeper into a tool we supported, the Centro de Inteligencia Territorial, which is a non-profit research institution related to the Federal University of Minas Gerais called Celo Verde. And then close with looking at ways to scale both this model and other models. Let's start with Amazon. Amazon in 2019, we co-founded with Global Optimism, the Climate Pledge, and invite you all to join. We can talk about after how. And that's a commitment to reach net zero by 2040. That's 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. That's, as you can imagine, a big challenge for anybody, especially us, but we're making great progress into it. The Climate Pledge now has 400 plus signatories from around the world, striving to reach net zero by 2040. But it's also a community, it's a global community, and those that join become part of a community. You could exchange information, best practices, support each other in your goals and achieving your goals. Now, with the Climate Pledge Fund, we developed the Climate Pledge Fund. This fund is a $2 billion investment fund from startups to large corporations to game change in the area of sustainability, innovative technology. A couple examples, you might have heard about the Rivian. So it's an electric vehicle. Amazon.com is committed to purchase 100,000 by 2030, and we're supporting that company. Another one is carbon cure. We use in Brasilia, particularly, and have used and are continuing to use a lot of concrete, right? So where we can reduce emissions in concrete, we're going to make a big difference in lowering our carbon footprint. Carbon Cure developed a technology to create concrete with 20% less emissions. You know, it might not sound like a lot, but when you add it up, just take a look at the formal government center in Brasilia, and you can see how much concrete is being used. We're working with electric hydrogen engines, green hydrogen. We're talking to governors and others in Brazil about creating green hydrogen hubs and hoping to kind of continue that investment. Just a few quick facts about what we've been up to, and I really like to show that we practice what we preach, especially in terms of sustainability. We have published for the 4 years in a row a sustainability report. I'm sure you guys have one as well, and that's the way that you can track what we're doing, track our goals, and actually we're very honest about the gaps and that we need to meet still. I mentioned in the climate pledge, we're also the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy. You may have heard we just invested in a large solar farm in the south of Brazil. In Brazil. I think the location is confidential. I'm not sure if it's in the south, but in Brazil, 122 megawatt facility. So, and that will, when complete, hopefully power our Sao Paulo region, for example. And one of the ones I'm really excited about, I'm excited that we don't have plastic bottles here. Congratulations to the organizers. But water, you know, they say water is going to be more important resource than oil in the future. Water Plus is an initiative to return more water to the communities where we have our data centers than we use. Again, we do that through a different technology in terms of rainwater reuse. I'm excited, and when you come to Washington, please come visit. Just opened our new headquarters there, and we're collecting 7.5 million gallons of water a year and using it for evaporative cooling. We're using it for bathrooms. We're using it for watering a community garden that we have. And so we can pass that technology on as low-hanging fruit through Water Pledge and others. Neglected to mention on that slide that we're on path to be run, and this is entire Amazon. Think about the organization, not just AWS, across sub-organizations, 100% renewable energy by 2025. And every time I say that out loud, it gets a day closer. So that's really just over a year. Our original goal is 2030. We're pushing that to be much shorter than that. Talked a little bit about water stewardship. We have some tools, which again, I'll talk about a little later on, and the infrastructure as well, such as the chips and compute power. And this is the one that's really exciting to me, the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative. This is big, big open data that we can use, open source, no cost, that anybody can use to begin to do these climate analyses and modeling that we need to. In fact, I'll mention a project that we're doing with USP, and they're using something called a Brazil Data Cube, which is basically layers of information geo-referenced over time, and all in one place. That's the key, is to put everything in one place, and that's on ASDI. There are three parts to sustainability when we think about the cloud. Well, one is sustainability in the cloud. And so that's our infrastructure, right? That's the efficiency you get with, you know, a big scale data center, if you will, and servers connected to servers, as opposed to having your own on-premise on-premises service. It's those chips that I was talking to you about. Some more energy efficient than the normal chip by up to 60%. Others are designed to optimize speeds, reduce resources, and this is my favorite thing about sustainability in the cloud, and reduce costs. So this is co-benefit, now you hear me repeat this, of reducing costs and lowering your carbon footprint. It's a win-win. My mother's 84 now, yeah, and I recently began working recently in human years, not Amazon years, began working at Amazon. And when I tried to explain to my mother, what I did, she take a look outside there. So for that, that's the cloud for my mother. She's like, the cloud. I mean, I've gone through them on an airplane, but explain this to me. So essentially, I said, and sustainability, right? You're using computers and energy. So I explained it to her. I mean, basically, it's her laptop, the hard drive of her laptop, and the processor of her laptop, just remote, right? Another way to explain it is it's online email, right? But so she began to understand that there was something else called a cloud besides what we see out the window there. And she said, "What about sustainability?" And I said, "Well, you can reduce your carbon footprint, increase your security, and lower your costs by operating in the cloud." And she said, this was her immediate answer, no prompting. She said, "Well, that's a no-brainer. Why isn't everybody in the cloud?" So there are advantages in just lifting and shifting and migrating. In this case, to the AWS cloud, you can reduce your emissions by, on average, of your workloads, 80%, right? Just lifting and shifting. And we can talk about other ways in sustainability in the cloud that then you could further reduce your emissions. What else can you reduce besides emissions? Cost. Huh? And sometimes we start with cost and we're like, we can reduce your costs, and by the way, you can reduce your emissions. So sustainability in the cloud really is optimizing for sustainability, right? And so using best practices, um, really running the most efficient uh, types of servers, or using a certain chip, and we walk you through that, and you can further reduce your carbon footprint when the solar power farm comes online in Brazil. Another good best practice is move your workloads to a region that's powered by sustainable energy, right? Um, and we're at overall about, I think, 85% towards that 100% goal. But where we can, our regions of data centers are powered by 100%. And then here's where it gets really exciting: sustainability through the cloud, right? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, and that's what Rodrigo and I were talking about over lunch. That's really developing solutions through the cloud, right? So, this is more about kind of your workloads. This is about beyond, right? So, using, in this case, AI, ML, big data to develop solutions. So let's say, and I'll talk about some of these, but energy efficiency. So you want to have a more efficient building. You connect different devices and systems, run ML analyses, and then optimize your system. You can do that with big data. This is the forest through the trees, as well as it gets more the tree through the forest as well, and it gets more complicated by the day. We need to develop really. Once we get through these, actually, let's not wait. At the same time, Rodrigo wasn't waiting. Um, we need to be focusing on sustainability through the cloud. We also need to be shifting from reactive to proactive, right? So let's think about who here is from Minas Gerais? Anybody? Nobody. But who's here? Who here has heard of the flooding there? Just a couple. Okay. Big floods a couple years back. We're working with them, and we did a pilot to develop an early warning system, right? Which is good. We need to complement that with a long-term warning system, right? So let's from flooding, or let's say, for example, and we're doing this with a financial institution in Brazil, fire risk detection. So what's the risk of fire in 30 years? For Brasilia, looking at my window at the hotel, I thought we need to do this for water. We need to understand, right, a long-term warning system for water for Brasilia, right? And I'm sure there are other areas. Um, and so we've seen kind of 10 use cases. I'll focus on 4 today. One, just in general, responding to climate change, of safeguarding natural ecosystems. So that means also nature-based solutions, supply chains. About 80% of scope 3. So scope 3 are upstream and downstream emissions, right? So from the production to the sale to the use, let's say, of a product, that's 80% of emissions. And so that's the hardest one to tackle for us and everybody else. And then, how do you shape public policy based on science based evidence, right? Or how can public policy makers use it? And within that, we've begun to prioritize listening to our customer. We have an approach called working backwards. So yes, we may have ideas, but first we want to hear from you what your challenges are. And this is what we're hearing. Big challenge with, it's particularly in this sector, ESG reporting. Oftentimes, I've been told that we have 6 different. Anybody here work on reporting? A little bit. Probably some of what you do is our inputs for that. We have 6 different reports. Couldn't we just do this with kind of using the same data, but they're different formats? So, one of the things you can do with technology, of course, is automate that system. You can model, you can project, let's say, your ESG goals in each of the categories of environment, social, and governance, and into the future, and then work backwards and develop strategies. That's also become increasingly important for finance. Multilaterals are requiring ESG perform, and not just plans, but verification and approving the results, as well as just investors, let's say like BlackRock or others. Biodiversity and nature positive is one I want to kind of look at today, and value chain transparency. Now, you're not on your own. There's and certainly it says 80 of us here, but technology consultants, and again, we had a fruitful conversation. Let's find a technology partner, whether it's a small startup or a larger organization. They'll have, you're not alone. They'll be able to help you, support you in that. We work a lot with partners, and that's how we scale. So we have 100,000 plus partners globally, and consider them part of AWS. We're working, for example, with organization called Software One in Minas, CodeBit, CodeBit in Para. On the private sector, on the public sector, Centro de Inteligencia Territorial, which is an NPO. Certainly there's some solutions already done, but and prescriptive guidance that it's a big task to run at the speed of light. But technology is there. You have tech partners. Look at the universities, research institutions. They are cutting edge, but we don't always know what they're doing, and they're looking to engage, right? And so that's another source for you when you're tackling these challenges. So seeing the forest for the trees, right? Um, that's about connecting, right? It's about connecting, not being siloed. It's about an ecosystem, whether natural or urban, is messy, right? Although in Brasilia, people say, "Oh, we have all this traffic," and then, I lived 20 years in Bogota, and I don't know how many people have been to Bogota, but this is not traffic here. But it's still a complex system, and we need to understand it. We need to take the long view, look at the big picture, and not just be focused on one area. One deforestation in one state or desertification is going to impact the other, right? At the local level and then also at the regional level. One example of this is we were at a conference. I'm not sure, Ulysses, if you were, I can't recall if you were there, but in Washington, a public sector summit, and the day before, this is when we had thousands of out-of-town visitors, the air quality index was 50. And I had never paid attention to air quality indexes ever, right? Like it's kind of on your app, and it's like, what's that mean? Um, which apparently is still okay. Within 24 hours, it went to 310, right? And that's life-threatening in many cases if you're vulnerable. And it just basically said, you're in the nation's capital. Imagine if they said that to you. Do do not go outside today for fear of loss of life, right? So, and why was that? That was because of the wildfires in Quebec, right? So remember the reactive to the proactive, right? So yes, we're developing early warning systems and detecting forest fires, but we need to do that ahead of time. So just like regions are connected, the present, the past, the present, the future are connected. So what we do now, of course, is going to impact what we're seeing later. So what is AIML? We've been hearing a lot about it on the news, and you can add generative to that. But in general, AI is, in this case, a technique that computers use to mimic human intelligence, right? And by gathering large models of information and looking for patterns, right? It's been recently in the news. We've been doing it and integrating it for over a decade already. You can imagine, let's say, just take Amazon.com. You sign on, they're like, "Oh, how would you like this new jacket, Natalia? You like it?" And you're like, "Well, how would it know this, right?" So that's one example. But so we've been doing it for a while. Now I'm really excited to think about, generative AI and climate change. But let's just start with AI. And what we'll keep looking at today is machine learning, which is one part of it. So just recognizing patterns, developing models, using in data logic. Deep learning is, I won't go into that, subset, and then reinforcement learning. So this looks ominous. Just a few. Um, I think you're making those numbers up. I'm just getting started. Um, just quickly, in here we talked about scaling out. So certainly with cloud you can scale out. We talked about certain chips. These ones are designed to maximize AI. Very exciting geospatial machine learning. So for example, we were working with a financial institution in Brazil to develop a carbon credit calculator, right? Using geospatial data and seismic. So this institution wants to know, well, where should we invest, or how can we identify new potential carbon credits? You can use technology ML for that. And another exciting one is, understand that in Brazil and certain states, a lot of the land records, this all has to start with land title, right? If you want to do a carbon credit, right? And a lot of it's handwritten. It's not digitized. So you can use just automatic, services like transcribe or text track to extract the text, find patterns and images, and then kind of project to the future. And I mentioned the kind of machine learning model, the generative AI that uses these big foundation models. So what are the ways you can use this? ESG reporting and insights. Again, I talked about automated reporting, improved accuracy, value chain and circular supply chains, which is critical. And those, again, are all data driven. And you can, we don't have to do the work ourselves. In some cases, machines can do it more efficiently. And then again, I mentioned the building sustainability and optimization. These are all things that you can address with AI and machine learning. One of the difficulties about planning for the future is needing to see the unseen. So in this case, I'm not seeing the methane that we're like visually seeing it. You're seeing a forest fire, but one of my challenges, or our challenges in climate change sustainability, is until there's a disaster, people aren't fully absorbing it often. So how can you monitor this? Methane in this case is an instance where it's 20 times more potent in terms of global warming than CO2. So we want to make sure we're capturing that, and 60% is kind of anthropomorphic, kind of human induced. But because it's not seen in part, 70 this they calculate that the emissions are 70% higher than reported. So that's a challenge we need to address. Another one I talked about, air quality. Again, you can use the cloud services and compute on the cloud, ML, the SageMaker I mentioned before, and the Amazon Sustainability Data Initiative, and then add on other programs. We did a demo workshop in reInvent, which I hope you all join us at, which is our big conference at the end of the year. And participants developed a prediction of a healthy versus unhealthy air quality in 90 minutes, right? Tapping into these data sets. The project we're working on with USPE as well, they're monitoring CO2. They want to use this over 5.5 million square kilometers. They want to develop a decision-making tool to inform policymakers and also to be used by researchers. That's something you can accomplish in this. This is the diagram. It looks complex, but it's less so. And a lot of the architecture is there already. So with SageMaker, for example, it's kind of ready to go, and you can kind of just input the data. And finally, want to kind of look at the big issue, the supply chains deforestation, which is a big issue here. Certainly, the Amazon has been called the lung of the world. 90% is due to agriculture, and 66% of deforestation in Brazil is due to agriculture. So, how do we? I'm going to keep picking on Rodrigo. How do we, engage the agricultural sector in sustainable agriculture? And that starts really with the financial institutions, I think. And again, we were talking about how the driver for change in sustainability, Brazil particularly, in addressing the agriculture sector could come from financial service institutions. So big challenges. Our CEO, Adam Zalipsky, says that, or mentions that sustainability is the issue of our day. It's a big responsibility of all of ours, but also a big opportunity. These are kind of listing the kind of clear things that we're going to need to do in terms of compliance, supply chain, addressing scalability, solutions, and that complexity that I talked about, right? The seeing the forest for the trees, and then market and government and society requirements. Banco, I was pleased to hear that Banco Central is really taking a lead in Brazil and setting the tone of those regulations. I think it'll be a great model to follow. Science can play a key role. So we're talking about the combination of, in this case, Federal University of Minas Gerais and CIT and ASTI, combining that data, and then developing transparency and traceability in public systems. And that's what this tool that I'm going to show you in a minute is. Transparent, accurate, affordable, verified by third-party audits. Does anybody feel like every day is a little bit warmer? Or is it just me? I was trying to figure out what that is, and I keep coming back to this idea that, call me crazy, but I come back to this idea that maybe the climate is changing a little bit. I don't know. So, and it's led by public sector officials as well. The governor of Pará launching Celo Verde 2.1 this spring, and really has more and more governors in Brazil are placing emphasis on sustainability, but also recognizing how technology can support that. Celo Verde 2.1, I encourage you to take a look, and we hope to scale it across states. Is one of the first, maybe the first in Brazil, science-based traceability tool, online portal. But for those of you inclined, there's also a mobile app that's going to be incorporated with the CAR 2.0 and SICAR. And so ultimately, we hope to develop a unified sustainability data platform based on what we call kind of a data lake. So everything together, and that's the first step. The Celo Verde is part of that. What can you do? Well, it tracks, and check it out this evening. This is what I do in my spare time too. After work, I check out things like this. You can zoom in, at the lot level, or zoom out at the region level and see what's happening seeing if they're complying with the forest code. Brazil tracks 300,000 properties, and specifically it's looking at soy and cattle chain. But it's a really user-friendly tool where it's accessible, technically accessible to the general public, and we've been able to kind of enhance the version now with 5x5 meter resolution, which really improves the accuracy of this. It's updated daily, nearly real time, as I've mentioned. We're hoping that I'm going to say when, not if, I'm just going to be optimistic, when enforced, it will reduce CO2 emissions by 739 million tons of CO2 equivalent by 2030, and that's a lot of cars off the road, millions probably, and that's monitoring 27 million hectares of forest in Pará. So what we want to do is together, and I think the financial institutions can support this, is scale it across the Amazon. That would be about 1 million properties and 109 million hectares being monitored. So finally, to wrap things up, what do we look at today? We looked at seeing. I went fast. Seeing the forest through the trees, right? We looked at the importance of being proactive and shifting from reactive to proactive, and really trying to get the people to understand and help them see the unseen, so we can then begin developing models and making decisions now for how we want to use our limited resources to protect. Basically, it's for us and for our children and our grandchildren, those that go beyond. It's so long term. What can we do to then make those changes? We looked at methane emissions, or tracking air quality, or CO2 emissions in the Amazon with USPE and Celo Verde, and then trying to understand, how we can scale this in Brazil, and I really think this is a model for for the region, if not the world. I haven't seen it anywhere else, what you're doing here. So I encourage you to kind of check it out, look into it. Financial sector has, a lot of opportunities, and there are economic incentives as well to embrace sustainability, and particularly in the cloud, for financial institutions. And we've had discussions with Ulysses and the team, and many different financial organizations over the last year or so on what the business case of it, right? Remember I talked about reducing costs and your carbon footprint. So we can start with the business case, and it's there for sustainability, um, and you'll reduce your carbon footprint. So I encourage you to go back to your organization, understand, look at your own sustainability report, understand your goals, your challenges, your gaps, and how do you begin to prioritize sustainability, and what can you do? I hope to have given you a small glimpse of the art of possible here, and find a technology partner. Maybe start with the university, or even existing public sector officials, or others from startups to large organizations, and learn and be curious. Uh, certainly with AWS, and obviously there are others. A lot of resources already online, free training, guidance. Take advantage of data exchange for ESG. It's a kind of one-stop shop, and ASDI, which is open source data. So lots out there. I'll share my contact, and I'm happy to talk with any of you who want to kind of explore more later. Okay, we'll see if we get this right. Uma última coisa. Y podemos decir inteligencia artificial. Ok, nuevamente. Podemos decir inteligencia artificial. Ok. Podemos decir sustentabilidad. Bueno, nuevamente. Obrigado. Finalmente, muy en una voz muy alto, decimos inteligencia artificial para sustentabilidad. Nuevamente, más alto. Última vez. Ótimo. Muchas obrigado. Obrigado. Gracias. Thank you.